Breaking right now. Archetypes is over. That flop failed. Introducing Confessions of a Female Founder.
Another project, another controversy. Meghan Markle's podcast is officially cancelled. And just as she gears up for a brand new show, what went wrong? What's next for the Duchess of Drama? Let's break it all down. Another disaster.
The new podcast by Meghan Markle has just been announced by Lemonada. And Lady Colin Campbell, what I find so amusing about this, and I'm just looking at it for the first time myself, is that she thinks she is a female founder. I mean, literally every business project she touches turns to absolute disaster. But let me tell you what she's had to say about this, Lady C. She says on her Instagram, of course, "I'm so excited to share with you something else I've been working on. Confessions of a Female Founder, my new podcast with Lemonada Media. I've been having candid conversations with amazing women who have turned dreams into realities and scaled small ideas into massively successful businesses. They're opening up, sharing their tips, tricks, and tumbles, and letting me pick their brains as I build out my own business, as ever. It has been absolutely eye-opening, inspiring, and fun, because what's the point if we can't have some fun on this wild adventures? First episode is April the 8th. Lady Colin Campbell, Meghan, Confessions of a Female Founder. What do you think?
Well, I would imagine that she's speaking about the people she's speaking to, as opposed to herself. Because, I mean, what has she founded? Well, she may be a female flounderer, but I don't think she's founded anything except a phony dynasty. So I would imagine she's speaking about the people who she's interviewed, and they're the ones who will be
Look at that.
What can I say? I wait without bated breath.
And what I think will be most fascinating, Lady C, is probably seeing who hasn't been prepared to sign up. Because at this point, especially, by the way, if you've just seen the way that Mindy Kaling was completely roasted and humiliated on With Love Meghan, right? If you've just gone through all of that, why on earth are you going to be part of this?
Meghan's podcast cancelled? Meghan's highly publicized podcast Archetypes, once hailed as a groundbreaking series to challenge stereotypes, has come to an abrupt end. Spotify has dropped the show and confirmed that there will be no second season.
Well, of course, Dan, do we know who?
Nope.
She's
no
interviewing?
names. Of course, no names.
Well, that's also going to be material, isn't it? Who is she going to be interviewing? And because I mean, on As Ever Meghan, or With Love Meghan, so confusing.
Yes, exactly.
They're also puerile and paltry and forgettable that you can't even remember the names of the shows.
Yes, well,
But
I've got Lemonada's chief executive talking about this, Lady C. This is what they have had to say. As female founders ourselves, Steph and I are grateful to get a chance to build alongside Meghan the exact podcast we needed when we started Lemonada. And then Lemonada's chief creative officer and co-founder Stephanie Whittles Wax said, Meghan, sorry, I'm laughing because this is the first time I've seen it. Meghan is such a warm and welcoming person. Sorry, that's just so ridiculous. And you feel that in her interviews. She creates a comfortable space for her guests to bring fascinating personal stories to the table and open up in a way like they haven't before publicly. Listeners can expect conversations that are way more break room than boardroom. Meghan is such a warm and welcoming person, Lady C. Does this woman have her beer goggles on? Her rose-tinted glasses have been worn?
The Kerr's first cousin, another Kerr. It's ridiculous. I think, though, Dan, we need to wait and see what she comes up with. But if it's typical Meghan, it's going to be dull and boring because Meghan never manages to get anything of interest out. She's the sort of person who kills interest. She doesn't elicit it. She doesn't invite it because it's all about her. And it's all about her looking good and her being as wonderful as she thinks she is. And everybody must ratify that rather vain self-belief. And so I will be interested to see, because when she did Archetypes, of course, she made absolutely sure that none of the people whom her production team interviewed, and she then simply jumped in and asked the questions afterwards, but she made sure that she elicited nothing of any interest from anybody. And she had some rather interesting women on, but she's a bad interviewer because she doesn't know.
Indeed, and we saw that in With Love Meghan time and again, didn't we? Actually, she's not good at having these conversations. So the woman from Lemonade is saying she's a warm and welcoming person who gets lots out of her interview subjects. Well, look, time will tell, but that has certainly not been the experience of any of her other projects. The other thing that's interesting to me, Lady C, about this is the scaling down since Archetypes. It's almost as if Meghan is accepting, I'm not going to have a mainstream hit. I'm not going to get in the charts. I'm no longer working with Spotify, because it might be a worthy idea, but Lady C, there's no mass market interest in a niche business podcast for so-called female founders, is there?
This is a major blow, especially considering that Spotify had signed a reported $20 million deal with Meghan and Harry back in 2020. And now, crickets. Why the sudden end?
Well, whenever there is interest in a niche podcaster, I mean, because, say, Joe Rogan started as a niche podcaster, and look at what he's achieved. So, it's if you are of interest, and if you know how to plumb the depths with your guests, then you will go on to be big. Meghan has started big and is now much smaller. That's a retrograde direction to be in, and it tells you something about her abilities. And so I have no great deal of hope that this Lemonade is going to be anything but lemonade squeezed with Meghan lemons, I think, and without any sugar to actually sweeten.
Exactly. Let's just be honest about it. It will be a very, very sour listen. But Lady C, the figures are in, and we can now say categorically that With Love Meghan has been a disaster. So firstly, from Samba TV, that reports it hasn't matched the blockbuster numbers of Harry and Meghan. In its first 6 days, the lifestyle series drew 526,000 US households, while Harry and Meghan pulled in a staggering 2.1 million households in just 4. And Brittany, our friend from the Royal News Network, has been crunching the numbers overall on this. And she writes that the much maligned and mocked series drew an audience a quarter of the size of Harry and Meghan, and says, though it's the couple's second best performing title, there has been an obvious decrease in their audience size. As a result, she reports it's likely that Netflix is strongly considering whether or not it is worth continuing their reportedly $100 million relationship if their most talked about show is still 75% behind their most successful. And she makes the point, Lady C, that all Harry and Meghan have to sell is the royal family. And she says if King Charles and Prince William aren't worried yet, they should be. Perhaps Harry should be as well, as Meghan's best bet for a massive paycheck at this point is probably a divorce tell all. And then actually we have the top 10, and you can see, Lady C, that it debuted at the number 10 slot, and it's been beaten by quite a not that well-known British show called Toxic Town, also beaten by a 1-hour comedy special and a live WWE Raw. The irony is that storming Netflix at the moment, Lady C, is Mindy Carlines. new show, which is quite ironic, isn't it? Given that actually she should probably never have gone on with Love Meghan in the first place. But what do you make of that contention from Brittany from the Royal News Network that actually this failure is going to make it much more likely that Meghan is going to have to start dishing and sort of trying to destroy the royal family again, because that's the only thing that seems to work for her from a commercial perspective?
According to insiders, the show struggled behind the scenes. There were whispers of low productivity, missed deadlines, and even ghostwriters doing most of the work.
Well, it's the only thing that worked initially with Oprah and with the Netflix show, that there's nothing really that Meghan has to dish that anybody would believe, because had Meghan seriously had stuff on the royals, she would have been able to pressurize them into getting half in, half out. So the fact that she was never able to exert pressure initially when it really counted, and when she would have been able to make the move to California, and she would have been able to have commercial enterprises that would not have resulted in the necessity for her to trash the family. She had one of two options. She was going to convince the late Queen that this was a good way to proceed, or she was going to convince the Queen that the Queen had to allow her to be half in, half out, because she had blackmail material. Well, she doesn't have blackmail material. She's never had blackmail material. She's come out with very effective but ineffectual accusations. You know that she, in the Oprah interview, that one member of the royal family had once commented on the possibility of Archie's skin color. This was before his birth, which in fact in mixed race families is a perfectly standard conversation to have. So that she was putting a negative spin upon something that was perfectly normal. And that's the high watermark, followed by the accusations through amid scabies in Holland that it's the King and the Princess of Wales who are the racists. She has nothing else. Had she had anything, she would be half in, half out. So anything she comes up with now is going to be as basically paltry as what she's come up with, which had a massive effect at the time, because people actually thought, well, there might be merit to it. But that's at a time that the public, not only in the United Kingdom, but all over the rest of the world, thought that Meghan was somebody who was reliable, trustworthy, that she had been accepted by the British royal family, and that she was leaving, according to her statement, to pursue independence, financial independence in the United States of America, and that she wanted to remain half in, half out as a half-time member of the royal family, doing jobs for the Queen and the Commonwealth. Let's remember what her original statement said. That's what it said. So all the nonsense that she's come up with since about how badly she was treated, had she been as badly treated as she lied and said she was, she wouldn't have wanted to remain half in, half out. She wouldn't have wanted to continue to be a working member of the royal family half the time. So her very actions and inactions show that there's really nothing that she can come up with that is going to be credible, because had it been credible, she'd have played the card some time ago. I'm not saying she's not going to lie, and I'm not saying she's not going to come up with other rubbish the way she has in the last 5 years, but every time she comes up with rubbish, it is rubbished, and she is exposed as the liar and the fraud and the race-baiting, attention-seeking, sociopathic narcissist that her behavior shows us that she is.
Spotify execs weren't impressed. When the check clears but the content doesn't deliver, guess what? The platform pulls the plug.
Oh, indeed. And the thing is, Netflix are crazy because they have such a strong brand. Why are they allowing it to be dragged down by everything you point out? And actually, there are also, Lady C, new figures in for Polo, Harry's show. And again, the Royal News Network has crunched the numbers on this and revealed it was a disastrous flop, managed only a measly 600,000 views for December. And the other series, Live to Lead and Heart of Invictus, did not even make the chart whatsoever. And when you actually really dig down into what they're paying for, Lady C, it's astonishing because Brittany says, in fact, for the whole of 2024, they only had a grand total of, wait for it, 3.3 million shows for all 4 of their shows up to that point. Harry and Meghan allegedly have a deal worth $100 million and yet could only scrounge up 3.3 million views for an entire year. I mean, Lady C, most Netflix shows get that in their first week. So it feels just astonishing that Netflix would go on with this. I mean, maybe they're hoping to make a lot of money from the products that Meghan's planning to sell.
I gather that that's not feasible. That, in fact, there's grave concern at Netflix that the investment in that direction is going to be as abortive as everything else has been. I would not be surprised if Netflix, I mean, depending on how desperate Meghan is, Netflix is going to be able to get her for either little or virtually nothing. Now, I have to say, my information has always been that the figure of $100 million was never, ever going to fly accurately. No. And, you know, that would have, that they would have earned having been given production.
Exactly. If you give us this hit series, yeah.
So that's the press keep on saying $100 million, and evidently Harry and Meghan are the people who said $100 million initially, to show everybody how the benchmark for their value is really, you know, they were benchmarking their value by pitching it very high. And I think the likelihood, I'm told, is Netflix is either going to just let the contract die, or it will suit them and Meghan to have a renewed contract that is going to be at maybe 100th of what the other one was. But that way, Meghan saves face, and they have their all in terms of other potential projects related to the royals, that keeping Meghan and Harry involved might be a clever business move. But I gather it's quite possible that will just fall by the wayside and they'll just do a Pontius Pilate. But let's see what happens. I understand that it's all up for discussion at the moment, and that nothing's been decided yet. But the harbingers are not good for Meghan and Harry to have. They'll never have a renewed contract that was as financially beneficial to them as the previous one, because they have been a disaster in terms of productivity and profitability where Netflix is concerned.
Another disaster, or a daring new chapter? Only time will tell, but one thing's for sure, the Meghan Markle media machine isn't stopping anytime soon. What do you think about Meghan's canceled podcast and her new show? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and smash that notification bell so you never miss a royal revelation.